Welcome to Let's Be Well Together podcast. We're your wellness check-in team. We talk about different categories of wellness and seeking balance between them. It all stems from my book, Accidentally Well. And there's overview info on our website, letsbewelltogether.com.
This is episode 8.
The weeks are rolling by, Sammy. I'm really enjoying these. Welcome back.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Today we're going back to the quote list, and you saw a quote that you thought was interesting and wanted to talk about. Mm-hmm. This one I threw on my list, and it is that history is mostly guessing. The rest is prejudice. Mm-hmm. And it's from Will and Ariel Durant, American historians. And I put it on because I used to study history. And it took a long time before I realized, holy cow, it's the victors write the history books.
Yeah.
So that's in the context of wars, but the same thing happens in so many contexts, which is whoever controls the telling of history can have a big impact on what people know about it.
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, just listening to that quote and like hearing it, it makes me think of my own experience. Specifically, I'd say in like high school and grade school, within my own education of not really learning anything when it came to, or just the history books not mentioning anything when it came to Indigenous or residential schools and what part Canada had to play in that. And really it made me think of like, they only show what they want to show. They only tell what they want to tell. That makes Canada seem great. And, you know, they sometimes touch on those little topics, but like one sentence out of the whole thing. And it wasn't until I went to university where I really started learning about residential schools. And we went and visited one and listened to someone who was a survivor and spoke to us about their experience there and kind of took us around the residential school. And it was so eye-opening to listen to that and to really be there and see what it was like. Obviously, I could never fully understand what it was like because I was not there and I'm not Indigenous, but just to be there and listen to their story of what happened to them was so eye-opening, and it almost made me angry that why didn't we learn about this sooner? Why are we just learning about this in university? And the only reason I'm learning about this is because I chose to take this course. This isn't a mandatory course for everybody. This was, I want to take this course and I was excited, and that's why I learned about it, which was eye-opening.
It's embarrassing. It's angering because I didn't know anything about that till I was 50 years old. Mm-hmm. And I studied history at university. I love history. Mm-hmm. I've read countless books about Canadian war history, which is a subject matter I'm interested in. I didn't know anything about residential schools.
Yeah.
Well, how can that be? And how much of that fault is mine? Mm-hmm. Not just because I'm not just going to dump it on other people, but it's true that whoever controlled the school curriculum wasn't telling us about that.
Exactly. Yeah. And I even went to the drum circle on the Truth and Reconciliation Day and listened to some Indigenous people speak. And the one woman who spoke, she talked about her experience on also not knowing anything about the Indigenous schools. And her mother never told her anything because she was afraid that if she knew about it, that then she would be taken or something bad would happen. So she never learned about it until she went into university, which I thought was really interesting because she just also, like, it was something that they were taught to not talk about or learn about or pass down. And so there were even some Indigenous people that as they grew older, they learned about it. And she was in a university class and she read a book and it mentioned the residential schools. And she called her mom and said, what school did you go to? And then that's when the conversation opened. And that's when she fully learned about what happened to her parents. And that was really interesting to hear because I had no idea because she went to a non-Indigenous school. So it was also not taught to her.
I can also imagine that would open up a lot of wounds and be a very difficult discussion for the mom.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, I've come to conclude that my own wellness and the wellness of the people around me requires me to learn and better understand what happened. And not just for its own sake. So I'm fortunate I had a colleague who I work with who's Indigenous and who's on the leading edge of Indigenous law. And she gave me a copy of it's actually the short version, but it's it's almost a 2-inch thick Surlocks bound document for honoring the truth, reconciling for the future, summary of the final report of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. And I need to read that. So far, I haven't taken the time. I could say I don't have the time, but the truth is, like everything in life, we choose what we do with our time.
Yeah.
And I need to read this all the way through. I read the first section of it and I was blown away. I was saddened. But ultimately, I was left with a lot of hope. Because what struck me, and I'm certainly never going to try and speak for Indigenous people, and don't think that that's what I'm doing, but the message I heard from a lot of the Indigenous people who were quoted in this section was not vindictive. It wasn't revengeful. It was saying, people, we have to live together. We have a certain outlook. You have a different outlook. We have to find ways to communicate with each other, and we have to find ways to live together in harmony. And it just seemed so generous to me that people would express those kind of thoughts in the context in which we're coming across them, the residential schools and all the harm and damage that was done in that process. Definitely.
Yeah, it's really like, can't think of the word, but like you just look up to Indigenous. Like I look up to the Indigenous people for taking that side and being like, you know what? We're going to be the better people here. And we just want to open a conversation or, and they did, like, we should just be willing to listen and just sit there and listen to the stories and learn with them, work with Indigenous on how to move forward.
Too many of the people who I know, I still hear the same message that, they always want something. And then, but if I hear what those people are saying, they're often taking our framework, whether it be of laws and how property is designated and whatnot, or, possession is 90% of the law. Those kind of attitudes are superimposed on their thoughts, and they're not opening their mind to looking at the world in a different way.
Yeah. And for me, the word that comes to my mind when I listen to people like that is that they're choosing to be ignorant. They're choosing to ignore because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to learn. It makes you feel bad about yourself. But you're choosing ignorance.
I guess I balk at that because I try not to be too judgmental about people. And I'm not trying to accuse you of doing that. I'm just saying, like, in my own thinking, I would rather be trying to find a way to break through and open the discussion with them.
For sure.
I don't know if they're making an active choice or if they just, for whatever reason, there's a block, there's blinders on.
Right.
And someday, by the way, I want to have one of our chats about the spectrum between dogmatism on one side and skepticism on the other.
Right. Yeah.
Because this is playing into kind of the dogmatism side of it. And again, where did we start this conversation? Things that we learned in school. History is written by the victors.
Yeah.
Okay, so a whole bunch of us, I'm one of the old white guys. We grew up and learned things and observed things and experienced things in a certain way, where the world skewed in a certain way. And that puts up blinders.
Definitely, yeah.
And so, I think what I'm going to focus on is working on myself.
For sure.
I'm going to try and influence other people to open their eyes and their hearts to these stories. And so let me just throw it out there, people. You should look online, find the information, at least relating to the commission, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. At least see if you can find some summaries as a starting point and some of the statements that are being made so that you can better understand what's happening and what did happen.
Definitely, yeah. Keep learning.
Guests are giving their time, expanding our minds. Welcome back. We're here for part 2 of our interview with Julia and Jonathan from Parkrun. We'll start with a recap, then finish the interview.
So Parkrun is a event that happens every Saturday morning at 9 a.m. across the world in many different countries. It is a run, walk event whereby it's a 5-kilometer event. Every event is. And it's meant to encourage people to be outside, to be at their local park, and to develop their running skills or walking skills. And it is free. So there is no cost to participate and minimal equipment required. And the idea is that it's accessible to as many people as possible. Yeah, I think the non-competitive nature also speaks to the community feel of it. At least it did for me, because I'm not a competitive runner in any way.
You can pursue excellence without needing to beat someone in order to feel good about yourself. You can both run well together. And running is one of those sports that it is quite cooperative if you have the right frame of mind to do that. And I think it's a very important component of wellness, not feeling the need to compare yourself to others quite so much. And parkrun, I think, achieves that goal quite well.
So then on the volunteer front, I'm going to ask Julie, just because I see you every week right now. I guess you're not running right now because you're taking care of your child, but you will be running at some point. But I see you working with all the volunteers. So how can people volunteer? What do you need volunteers to do? Kind of when do they show up and finish, so they kind of get a sense of what their day would look like?
Yeah, we are always looking for volunteers. And I think sometimes people are unsure about how to sign up. They can just email us. Our email is on the website. Yeah, we're always on the lookout for more volunteers. They don't necessarily have to also sign up for the upcoming Saturday. I've had people say, I can volunteer in about 4 weeks, and that's perfect, because then we know in 4 weeks we have a timekeeper, and that's fantastic. So again, it doesn't have to be the week before. Yeah, we're looking for people to help out with the facilitation of the event. So that's things like keeping time, scanning those barcodes that we talked about earlier. We have a position called the tail walker, which is pretty important to our events, which is somebody who walks the course and is a dedicated last finisher, which both enhances the safety of the event, but it also means that nobody else has to be the last finisher, which is really big for people who are just kind of starting out on their running journey. So we always need somebody each week for that. And then one that often gets overlooked, but really shouldn't be due to its importance, is somebody to help us with our equipment each week. It is a decent amount of equipment. It fits in a small car, but just somebody to kind of keep that equipment throughout the week and then bring it back the following week. That's a volunteer position in and of itself, and set up and take down, of course. For volunteers, those non-setup positions, people can show up 10 minutes before we start, and that's okay. So 8:50, you can expect to be done by 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. And if you're bringing the equipment or there to set up, maybe 8:30 is what we're looking at. But again, most times you're done by 10 in the morning. And I will give a plug for volunteering as well. And if you volunteer 25, 50, 100, 250 times, you can get a t-shirt, which in the parkrun world is a big deal. So
yeah,
we're always looking for people to do it.
Yeah, I think we should probably talk about that briefly, which is just, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jonathan, but I guess every certain number of races, is it on the 50 that you get a different t-shirt? And do you have to buy that? Do they just send it to you? How does that work?
You do have to buy the shirt, but it would be cheaper if you lived in the UK. But they make them there, and then you have to pay for it in pounds and ship it over here. So it ends up costing, I guess, closer to what you would pay for a t-shirt normally. But they just announced new t-shirts things. Like I think you can get a 25 for running now. Is that right, Julia? Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
So you can get a purple for running. It used to be just the purple 25 for volunteers, but now they've got the full 50 is red, and it's across the board for both volunteering and running. 50 is red, black is 100, 250 is it green or something?
It's green.
Yeah. And there's a 500, and I think they came out with a new 750 because parkrun's been around for quite a long time now, and there have been people who have been showing up every week So,
Yeah, I mean, to get a 50, like let's say you want to get a 50 as fast as possible, that's almost a complete year. There's 52 weeks in a year, so that's pretty amazing. The barcode. So I have to admit, I've messed it up a couple times. So the process is, so you get your barcode by going online and registering, and then you either just print it on your printer, and there's another option. But so then when you finish, somebody hands you go to the certain person who's waiting there, and they hand you a little barcode, a chip. And I think that's your position. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah, we refer to that as the token. I know
Okay.
they both have a barcode, so it's very confusing.
Okay.
But we do refer to that as the token. And then people have their barcodes, and we scan those. And by putting that data together, it allows us to identify the finisher with their time, and then they get their stats emailed to them later that day. They just announced today that barcodes will now be accepted on mobile devices as well. So while it's helpful to print them, it is now, accepted through mobile devices too.
That's awesome. Yeah. So just to describe to people who are listening. So you cross the line, everyone cheers, which is great. Everyone claps. And then there's somebody standing in the line who's got a phone, and they push a button that tells what number you are, and then you get your token, and then you go to someone else and they scan both. Now, I actually looked online and I bought one of those fancy wrist bracelet things. So my barcode's on a bracelet, which I like because just for people out there, it also has, on the flip side of it, it has your emergency contact information. So I wear it when I run all the time now, because I used to carry a little a piece of ID just in case anything went wrong. But now I have my parkrun bracelet that has my barcode. It has my contact information in case something happens. So it's great. Okay, well, this is all being great. One thing I want to just say is, I thought, even though I wasn't there all the time, I thought a lot about it, and I heard a lot of great things. And it just seems to me, I'm one of these people that's getting a little jaded with the racing world. There's so many things like drug findings and everything else. And, I'm just busy living my life, and I'm not really one to watch too much about racing anyway. I think it's amazing that people can do it. I know a lot of people around me who are actually in that world, and it's incredible what they do. But I actually see parkrun as the future of running myself, because it's regular people in a community doing it for leisure, doing it because they want to be healthy. Let's not forget we're talking here on a podcast that's talking about physical wellness. And I just think parkrun has so many great attributes that can help all of us, just us regular folk, feel better about ourselves physically and mentally. So that's great. Now, is there anything else that you guys were wanting to get out there or communicate?
If I can jump in, I think one of my favorite things, just along the lines of what you just said, John, about parkrun, is that it was really celebrated when the average time for finishing parkrun increased from in the 20s to over 30 minutes. It was meant to be a very big moment for parkrun as a global movement, because it means that people who wouldn't necessarily, have traditionally participated in the running event are now coming out more and feeling more welcome. So that's something that I find people really resonate with when we talk about kind of that participation aspect of parkrun. And it's just a different sort of way of thinking about running than has traditionally been thought about. So I thought of that when you just said what you said, John.
And what about you, Jonathan?
It's kind of like with commuter cycling, where people who used to only bike to work, they would they have all their spandex and racing bikes and everything, and they'd gun it, and they'd need to shower when they get to work. And I think that it's a similar thing where ordinary people are wearing their street clothes and they don't need to shower because they're going at a casual pace and they're just living their lives. I think it's the same thing with parkrun.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping to see, that people just, incorporate running as part of living your life. You don't do it because you're trying to get fast. You're not doing it because you're trying to win a race. You're doing it because you're trying to live your life. And the other thing I just want to throw out there for people too is there's probably listeners who are saying, yeah, but I'm really slow. I can tell you from experience, I started off as a really slow runner. I'm a person who always talks about being really slow. And you just got to get past that, because the truth is there's so many of us who are really slow, and it's not an obstacle. We're still runners. I've been fortunate because I've been sticking with it for a while that my speed and stamina is increasing. And, not that really matters. It's just nice. It's a nice feeling. But nobody is too slow to do park run. So if you're saying to yourself, I'm too slow, you are not too slow. Go out and enjoy it and have a great time. So, okay. Now I'm going to catch you guys. I'll start with Jonathan and then Julia. I ask all of our guests the same question at the end of the show, because we're just working on, one of the themes we have is to try and talk to people about activities that can foster wellness, and just to show that all of us, no matter who we are, there's something in our lives that we can work on the wellness side. So let me start with you, Jonathan. If you can think about different areas of wellness, different categories or facets, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And if so, can you think of one activity that might help foster that area?
Well, John, I've been thinking about this for a little while now. Since parkrun started up, I had or since parkrun ended a while ago, I'd gotten out of the habit of going to the farmer's market after, because that was a big bonus for me of it being in Victoria Park, because I was already in downtown Kitchener at market time. And ever since the pandemic, I kind of stopped going to the market. It was closed for a while, and I got into the habit of going to grocery stores to buy food. And only recently have I been able to break the habit of only going to the grocery stores. I've been able to get to the market after parkrun, and I what did I buy the other time? I think it was mushrooms. I noticed a dramatic difference in the quality of mushrooms that I was eating, just because I bought it at the market, compared to what I was getting at the grocery store. And I'm starting to feel like a little bit better, like nutritionally, because I wasn't, sometimes you see the produce at the grocery store and you think, I don't really like this today. But I've been eating more vegetables because of this.
That's amazing. And it's so interesting, because one of the other things I often think about is how so you've pointed out an activity, going to the farmer's market. And I don't connect that to just one area of wellness. It's connected to so many. I mean, healthy eating is so critical. And, I'm a proponent like you of spending a little more money on quality food, especially when it's real food like vegetables. And also a plug for KW, which we're so lucky to live in KW, where we have the St. Jacob's Market out just past Waterloo, where there's so much fresh produce and amazing stuff, and the Kitchener Market right downtown. So, well, that's great. So Julia, let me go to you too and ask the same question. So if you think about different facets or categories of wellness, are you currently neglecting an area of wellness in your life? And can you think of one activity that you could do to help foster that area?
Well, that's a good question. I like the healthy eating one. But maybe, I think maybe now that I'm currently on parental leave, maybe the intellectual area of wellness in my life is currently on hold, I would say. I'm really enjoying it and so thankful to be where I am. But yeah, I think that is a part of my life I really enjoy. I really enjoy that kind of problem solving, quick thinking, critical thinking part of the work I usually do. So maybe kind of going to an online conference, as funny as it sounds, but would probably really nourish my soul. So there's a couple kind of on the radar. So we might think about that and just kind of quenching that intellectual side I really enjoy.
Yeah, it's funny because that's actually one. So I'm trying to generate bullet point lists in each of these areas of wellness, just so that people can look at them and decide if there's something they want to pull off the list. And I'm struggling with intellectual wellness because I don't see it as being smart. I don't see it as like being an IQ test. I see it as exercising my mind, just like running exercises the body. What are the things we can do to exercise our mind? So That's definitely an area I'm going to be working on to try and connect with people and get ideas on how they do it. Anything from sometimes, some video games are good. Some reading is always good, problem solving. And with any luck, in about a year or so, we'll have a much nicer bullet point list of activities that we can do to foster intellectual wellness. So thank you both so much. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I really appreciate all the hard work you did to bring Parkrun to Kitchener. It's benefiting me. It's benefiting so many other people. So thanks very much.
I'm Cameron, and this is The Starving Artist. One of my favorite genres of music is modern heavy metal. Now, I'll be the first to admit, this is not for everyone, and I respect that, especially when it comes down to the vocal style. But for me, I find it very appealing. It's complicated, it's technical, it takes some effort to unpack and understand, but when you do, you get to see all the inner workings at play, no pun intended. I find that very rewarding. When I was just getting started with vocals, before I went off to school, I really fell in love with this kind of music and had no idea how to do it properly, vocally, without hurting myself. But I wanted to learn so desperately. So when I was at school, I joined a few metal ensembles, practiced hard, and I studied a lot of vocal anatomy to figure out what the heck's going on in there. How can someone shriek and scream for 2 hours straight and then go sing opera? How does that work? So I spent the time, I studied hard, I practiced, I fell down a few times, but eventually I got it down. And I got decent enough that I was fronting a few metal projects. One of those was a touring metal opera, Queen Boudica, a metal opera, where I played the villain, believe it or not. And basically, for 2.5 hours, it was my job to shriek and scream and make terrifying noises. It was a pretty sweet gig. Another project that I was in was a modern metal band called Emissivity, where I was the frontman. And that was a sweet band. I really enjoyed my time there. Despite it sort of fizzling out when I graduated and we all had to go separate ways, we've all been in touch. Great group of guys. The founding member, Megant, he and I have done a few collaborations even since Emissivity. And one of the fun ones was one I want to tell you about today. And it wasn't for a song or an album. It was actually for a video game. So Megant had dropped me a line and he said, "Hey, I'm doing this video game sound design project, and I need somebody to voice the opponent in the game, the villain. It's a giant evil spider." And so he had come to me and asked me to use all my metal sounds to make the sounds for a giant spider. So somewhere there's a reel of me hissing and growling and making terrifying noises. None of them are real words, just sounds for things like the spider jumping or hitting you or being hit by you and all kinds of stuff. I don't know if he ever released the game fully or if it just remained a project, but somewhere there's a reel out there of me making ridiculous noises. I just thought it was fun that such a niche skill could have an even smaller, more specific use case that I never would have guessed ever when I was learning how to do it. Pretty cool. That's all for me today. I'm Cameron. This is The Starving Artist. Until next time.
If you like what we're doing and enjoy the show, please spread the word about us. Connect with us on social media. We post regularly on our Instagram account, including show previews and takeaways after a show is aired. Feel free to comment and send us your thoughts. Follow our Instagram account. It's at lets.be.well.together. We do have a Facebook and Twitter page, but Instagram is our primary social media site. Please also subscribe to us and rate us on your favorite podcast platform.
Move that body like we're meant to do.
It's the Sheila and John version of Move That Body.
Hi, everyone.
Today we are talking about something I keep reading about and what I've bought into, which has to do with how we're designed. And that I think a lot of people think that somehow, even though there have been a lot of technological changes in the last 100 years, that somehow there's been also a huge change in the human body that has somehow changed us from how we were designed and how we acted as hunters and gatherers for centuries and eons, and that somehow now we can act differently.
We're just intellectuals.
Maybe.
We don't need our bodies. We just need our brain.
But I disagree.
So do I.
So think about what hunters and gatherers did. They did a lot of running. They did a lot of moving. They bent down and picked berries.
Yep. Did a lot of gardening.
They did that. They did gardening. And think about how much of that we do in our lives. You know, luckily I'm starting to turn that around. But for how many years did I just sit in a chair, sit at a desk, sit on a GO train?
Yeah, I wanted to make sure when I got a new job after my business, I wanted to make sure that I was it was active, because I cannot sit. I'm just not that type of person.
And now that you have one that's a bit active, how do you like it?
I love it. But I do still need to be active, you know, like, because it's repetitive, you know, you're not working some muscles, so I need to still do activities to keep my body well-rounded.
Yeah. The one thing, I did switch to a standing desk a few years ago, and that does make a big difference.
Yes.
Now, luckily for me, I have one that goes up and down. And so I spend most of my day standing at my desk, but I definitely make sure I take time to sit down for an hour here or there, because from what I hear, it can be just as problematic if you just stand all day versus sitting versus only sitting all day. But really the idea is we need to think about how the human body is designed. We have to get past thinking that it's somehow changed dramatically in the last century. So somehow we don't have to do the same thing that we've been doing for thousands of years to stay healthy and to be telling our internal self that we're still contributing. We're still needing to move. We still.
Yep. Move it, use it, or lose it. That's the way it is.
Yeah. And, you know, that's a great expression, and it's really true.
Yes, it is true. And there is a problem, because you don't have a choice. You have to do your job. And if your job's in front of the computer, if your job is, you know, not moving, then you have to try and find other ways to move. Like maybe at lunchtime, or taking the stairs instead of the elevator.
That's a great idea.
You got to move.
So in addition, because I would add that you have to, if you have an office job and you want to take care of your physical health, it seems to me there's only one thing you can do, which is to take time out of your day and devote it to physical activity, aerobics, strength training, core training. Find the time. But I like your idea. I think what you're saying is, why not also incorporate it in your day? So
you have to have lunch. So walk a little farther
to get lunch. Or if you eat lunch in your office, go for a walk after you eat lunch.
Yeah. A lot of people do that.
Yeah. And then a lot of people don't have office jobs. So maybe there's other ways they can find to walk. Or you work on the 3rd floor, well, take the stairs.
Right. And if you're 16 floors, and just take the stairs for, you know, as long as you can, and then take the elevator. It can be getting better and better, and one floor at a time type of thing.
I used to work on until recently I worked on the 10th floor of a building, and somebody else, it wasn't my idea. They like to make sure they, at least when they got to work or at lunch, they walked up the stairs.
Yes.
They had to do it one of those times. And then I started doing it. And by coincidence, that happened before I got in shape.
Yes.
And I can remember, and you don't want to look embarrassed either, right? So, and when we popped out, it was at reception. So I would walk up the stairs, and by about the 6th floor, I was wheezing and I could, hardly breathe. And I didn't think I was going to get to the top, but I did. I pushed through, got to the top, and someone would say hi, and I'd be like, hi, and my whole objective was just to get to my office so I could shut the door. Like, I'll try to look composed, get to my office, shut the door, and collapse in my chair and be like, oh.
Yeah, I remember you telling me that story. And so then I went to visit you, and I took the stairs. And it was hard. Like, I was like, oh, it can't be that hard. And I started going, going and going, then getting slower and slower. It was 10 floors. It was a tough go.
And one of the things that's so great about once I did get in shape, and a reminder, is I would like to take the stairs sometimes. Yeah. And I would be on the 8th floor, and I'd be trucking along with a smile. I'd be on the 9th floor, no problem. I'd be on the 10th floor. I'd pop out. Somebody would say, hey, hi. And I'd say, how are you? And I'd talk to them for a minute because I had my breath back. And I really felt like I was getting back to be that human that I was supposed to be.
Yep. So just one step at a time, move it.
There's a thought. Popped up while running. I never lose sight of the fact that the personal epiphany I had and what got all this going, it didn't happen when I was sitting in a comfy chair reading a book or sitting at a desk working away or sitting and typing. It didn't happen while I was just calmly sitting and trying to figure out these types of things. It happened when I was out for a run. It happened when I was being physical. And I really don't know what all that means. I just know that I'm going to keep that in mind going forward. And my theory, and I can't explain it, but my theory is that for me being physical, getting back in touch with physicality, using my muscles, feeling blood pumping through my system, feeling oxygen going into my lungs and out, that combination and doing all those things somehow unlocks parts of my mind that I don't usually access. Or it makes me think in a way that I don't normally think. Sometimes I think of music that way too. When I hear music, it seems to open up areas of my mind that I don't feel all the time. And again, I'm not a scientist, so I'm sure somebody could explain how that works. That's not me. But I know that there are certain things or certain activities that I do that help me think in different ways. And so for me, I'm going to keep running. I'm going to keep exercising in some fashion. When I can't run anymore, I'll do something else. I'm going to keep the blood coursing through my veins and the oxygen going in and out. And I'm going to hope that it leads to more running pop-ups. And who knows, maybe another epiphany.
Yeah, just let me say, flip side of the coin. And on Flip Side, we are going to talk about opposites attracting. And in that sense, I'm the doer and John's the thinker.
I didn't know that before we started going out. And never thought about it.
What opposites attract, or that we're opposite, or that you think a lot and I do a lot?
Well, that's a good question. we talked about a lot of stuff. No, the thinker and doer thing. We're so much a product of our environment. There's something to both nature and nurture in that discussion. And
yes, that's true.
So growing up, one of the examples I had, sorry, Dad, is that my dad would plan. When there was a job to do, whether it was around the house, lots of planning.
Lots of planning, lots of thinking, lots of research.
Needing to have just the perfect idea, the perfect concept before you start. And
yeah, but the problem is that you can't. Like, is there a perfect?
Exactly. And so skip forward now, forget the past. We get married, we start having to do projects around the house. We each have our own, but sometimes we'd have to work together. Let's say, I don't know, I'm not going to pick one, but we had to do something around the house. So I said, okay, just stop. Let me figure out how to do this. What equipment will we use? Where will we get that equipment?
Yeah.
What products do we need?
Yeah.
And you'd be like,
let's just do it and we'll work our way through it and then we can stop and figure it out. But let's start.
So, and then I get mad. No, we have to figure this out. And then, so I can remember a few times, back in the day where I'd be like, well, I'm going to harumph. I'm going to go start planning this and I'm going to have the perfect solution. And by the time I get back, you're done.
I'm done.
And it's not perfect, but the job is done. Sometimes it was perfect. And it was a great lesson for me.
Yeah. So you've definitely changed a bit, but the way that we've evolved, I feel, is, we plan what we're going to plan. So instead of saying, okay, let's do this now, it's like, okay, this needs to be done, that needs to be done. We've got these few things. And then you kind of figure out your plan and, organize things and do it beforehand. So that when we get to it, either you have a basic idea of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it, or we just start going, which is really great.
I think it's one of those. So one of the things I say in the book is about the opposites attract and how that helps both the people involved, but also the next generation. I mean, so if Sheila's a doer and I'm a thinker, then hopefully our kids are a bit of doers and thinkers.
Yeah,
and,
that's true.
And you hope that if that happens over time, over a species, that builds a stronger next generation.
Yeah.
But what I also like to think is that in the relationship side, it's a great example of give and take.
Yeah. It works.
So now I think we're at a better place because some of my planning works really well.
Yeah.
And Sheila's doing works really well. So now if I can have a little bit of time to plan, and then we both start the doing a bit earlier.
Yeah, we've kind of accepted our fates.
Yeah.
And you think and I do, and I'll wait for you to think sometimes, not always.
No. It's hard to think of examples on the fly, but one or a couple that I can think of is let's say cleaning the garage.
Yeah.
Or the junk drawers get too full, or
yeah.
And your tendency is to just say, well, let's just find a place for everything.
Yeah, because there's one thing about me is I do really like things clean, but it's appearance clean sometimes, not just completely clean. So I do tend to load up closets or load up drawers.
Can I
and
qualify that? Like when you say appearance clean, you mean like when I look at the main floor, it's shining and spotless.
Yes, everything's
it's thoroughly clean.
Yes, it's thoroughly clean.
What I think you mean is if you look in cupboards and you look in drawers, you're not so worried if they're jammed full of stuff.
Yeah, they might be a little bit messy.
And that drives me crazy.
That drives John crazy.
So let's say I'm like, hey, we got to clean these drawers out. And you're like, fine, I'll just stuff this here and there. And we'll stop for a second. Can't we just figure out, let's go to the store.
Let's organize this.
Let's go to the organization store and see if we can get some compartments or something. And the same with the garage. Let's not just shove can we see if there's some shelves?
Yeah, because I'm more like, just take it all out and get rid of what you don't need and put it all back and it works. But then he gets these great organizers. Like when we organized the bathroom drawer, it was like, wow. It's so great because not only is it clean now, because we took everything out, got rid of everything and then put it back in. There's a place for everything. So hopefully it maintains like that. So it does help to think a little bit before you do.
Yeah, so we're just rambling on to say that one of the cool things about relationships is that, especially when opposites attract, is a little give and take goes a long way and works out well.
Yeah, and be patient with each other and use each other for their specialities.
Please remember that we're not providing advice. We hope to inspire you to work towards balance, and we urge you to consult with qualified people if you need advice. The people on the show are speaking in their personal capacities. Their views expressed are their own, and don't represent the views or opinions of their outside contacts, their employers, or anyone else. We try to get things right, but we can't guarantee everything we say is correct, or that the things we talk about will work for you. Let's be well together, and let's be sure to do that in a safe way.
And that's the end of Let's Be Well Together. How is everybody doing today?
Well, I am great. How are you, John?
I'm pretty good too.
Good.
Awesome. So just our little sign off going on today. And I have my birthday actually coming up this weekend.
Woohoo!
Yeah, 27 on the 27th. So it's my champagne.
Now, see, I would never advertise when my birthday is. I don't know.
No?
Maybe I'm just too personal. I don't know. Like that personal information is.
No, I think you're too old. No.
Very funny.
I've always loved my birthday. I've always loved it.
Me too. I love birthdays.
Yeah, and I think it comes from like being a social person. Mm-hmm. You're very like that too.
Of course, Sheila's been celebrating the same birthday for the last how many years?
Yeah, but I love it.
Yeah, but it's still a whole day about her.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I'm just getting ready for that, and got a lot of stuff going on the weekend just with friends and family. But yeah, that's about it. How about you, Sheila?
Oh, well, I had a great weekend. We went to the cottage up to Collingwood with some family. It was a girls' weekend, so that was a lot of fun. And we did yoga, and yeah, it was great. So get to the gym and enjoy the sun and the nice weather.
Yeah.
And spring is here. What about you, John?
Well, focusing on just kind of the physical stuff, I made the huge mistake last week after we talked about me being a little bit sick. Just before I went to bed, I said, "Hey, Sheila, isn't it great that I work out all this and I'm so, such in great shape and I've got such a great immunity that huge cough that you had just turned out to be a little teeny thing for me." And then, of course, I woke up the next day and I've been coughing ever since.
Yeah, the karma got ya.
Not terribly, but definitely I have a cough and it's not great. So then I did do some running. I took one day off. Had a really fun park run yesterday. The weather was great. And today I did another nice longish run. And for the, 21st, 23rd, 40th time since COVID started, starting tomorrow, I'm going to start watching what I eat and start doing core exercises and strength exercises and doing better.
Yeah, great. Super.
Awesome.
I'm going to do a shout out to Amy. I promised that I would say, because she listens to our podcast religiously. So there's another follower.
Hey, Amy. Alrighty. See you guys next week. And thanks for tuning in.
That is it for today's show. Please try and make wellness a priority.
You deserve it.
If you feel the need to talk to someone or ask for help, please do that.
Accept yourself for the person you are.
So long.
Adieu.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Goodbye.